Sitting down here with our good buddy Dave Reichhart at AgPlus to talk about grain marketing. Dave, good to talk to you again. We were telling people, you were telling me stories about buying some really, really good basis and real good deal, and still guys were turning it down, waiting for a better price. And it's like, we were telling them in the first quarter last year, again, around harvest, time to pull the trigger on some of these good prices. And now there's a lot of guys looking back with full bins and wishing something different.
Well, there's no question, Rob. I mean, this market has been surprising how quickly it's went down and how much it went down. No question about that at all. We wish everybody had everything marketed right now, but unfortunately that's not the fact. And I mean, you look at South America, especially with the soybean situation, Brazil's dropped their crop numbers, but Argentina's numbers are up so much more that we're never going to get back to last year's production in South America. We're probably looking at 10 to 15 million metric tons more crop than last year.
A lot of argument about that, about Brazil. USDA, of course, perennially, they're slow to move what a lot of people that are on the ground see. A lot of people were talking about getting under 150, and USDA brought it down a little bit, but not much. And you got a whole lot of analysts, and some that actually got boots on the ground are talking 145. And what do you see when you look at all the tea leaves?
Well, the same thing you're saying. I mean, Cordonier yesterday was out, and I kind of respect his stuff because he spends a lot of time in South America. I kind of wish I had that job. But, he's a 145, as you said. But you've got Argentina at 50, and that's a 195. And last year we were more like 180. So, we're still a situation where we're not going to overcome that. We're far enough along now. I mean, we're 40% harvested in Brazil. It's not going to change dramatically now. We might take 1 or 2 million metric tons off, but we're not going to take 8 or 10.
Well, that extra acreage, even if it did drop to 145, still, we're drowning in beans across the world.
Yes, and early numbers are showing about 3.5 million more acres soybeans, less corn. But the other factor is we planted about 2 million acres less wheat, and most logically that wheat ground's not going to go to corn. It's probably going to go to soybeans also. So I think we could be looking at, if there's no problem planting, 5 million acres more beans this coming year.
Well, I know you're sitting there at your desk, typically beating on your calculator and looking at a screen trying to figure out what kind of recommendation to give to our farmers. And tough situation right now. You got a bin that is just overflowing full, and we're getting darn close here. And the last thing you want is to be having to fuss with a bin full of corn, trying to keep it in great shape as you go through spring. What kind of recommendations are you giving to guys? What are we looking for in the market to try and figure out when to pull the trigger on some stuff?
Well, there's not a good choice right now. Unfortunately, a basis contract with a carry market like we're in today and spreads widening is definitely not a good option unless you're looking at a quick short-term thing. I want to haul it today and price it next week. If you're looking to carry it to summer, that's not a good option. This corn crop in the fall was harvested at wetter conditions than were normal. And we're seeing a lot more FM in the grain we have in-house and the grain that's coming off the farm, just because the quality of the kernel at harvest time wasn't quite as good as we've seen in recent years. So, it really comes down to sitting down with someone like ourselves and developing a plan of what price do I have to have? What can I live with? Do I want to take a risk with maybe a call option or something to give myself if we do get that summer rally? And we typically do, but it could be in April, it could be in May, it could be in June, it could be July or August. So where do you go to stay in the market that long? And that's what you have to really evaluate.
So make a plan and know what I'm looking for so that when I see it, then it's make the call.
Nothing more important than having that plan, because if you set the plan and you have a price in mind and it gets there and you pull the trigger, that's successful. Even the fact of you started out with, last summer, we had opportunities. And I understand a lot of guys were sitting looking at crops that didn't know if they were going to make a crop at the time. And it was hard to pull the trigger selling new crop at that time. But, we had opportunities of $6 corn last summer. That was a great price today.
Compared to today, actually, a lot of people looking back and wishing they woulda, coulda, woulda. So what might turn the corner a little bit for us and give us that uptick in the corn price?
Well, you've got the safrinha crop that's just planted in Brazil. Part of it might be a little later. Their dry season is April, May, so if they go into their dry season with not a lot of moisture and have a problem, that could be friendly to corn. On the soybean side, about the only thing we got is problems in the U.S. And if we add 4 or 5 million more acres, it's going to take a lot bigger problem to get us out of it, or demand. And the problem is our price today is about $1.50 a bushel more than it is in Brazil, so the Chinese are not buying from us. They're buying Brazilian beans because they're cheaper. And even to the point recently, we've seen some ships being sold to come into the East Coast for some of the feeders out there to use to process. So we're not helping our situation. Weather's about the only chance you have, and anybody's guess on the weather.
Well, and one of the biggest conversations, I think, over maybe the last 6 to 9 months, even maybe a little bit longer than that, has been about demand. That's been the word. It's like, okay, we need to find more demand. So all of this business with biofuels and ethanol and where we're headed with that, and of course, then you can throw the political business in there about China cutting the deal with Brazil to finally buy their corn. And you got Mexico saying they're not going to take anything, it's GMO, yada, yada, yada. You throw all this stuff into a big blender and try to figure out where demand is going. Is ethanol going to help at all?
Well, the big question there is sustainable aviation fuel. Is it going to be made out of soybean oil? Is it going to be made out of ethanol or some combination thereof? And it's a huge market if we can get developed into it and achieve it. But then the other side of that market is what do we do with all the DDGs? What do we do with all the bean meal? If we're going to keep it here and process it, we got to figure out a home to do with those products. And if you have more DDGs in the ration, you cut back on bean meal. If you put more bean meal in, you cut back on DDGs. One way or another, we're going to have a problem there. Hopefully, we can see some exports. One of the big challenges, Rob, is that we've seen here is the dollar continues to be very, very strong in comparison to world currencies, and that has made us out of price with the rest of the world. And it's great if you want to buy a new TV set that's coming from Japan, but it's not very good if you want to sell crops overseas.
Yeah, that $1.50 against Brazil, wow, that hurts. One last thing, and that is I've always been intrigued by the market in India. And it looks like we've kind of got a crack door open for us to get in there with some other things. And I know that corn and soybean people are, hoping that they'll start to get an idea how we do business and like it. And obviously, we're getting to a point where their population is bigger than China's. So it looks like a good market for us, but that looks like it's a few years away.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the opportunity is really good in that market long term, especially if we can get them a little more profitable and wanting to eat more meat. That's a huge success for us if we can see that happening. But as you said, I think it's a ways off, and in the interim here, we could have a couple of years of tough times. But there's an old saying: nothing cures low prices like low prices, and it only takes one bad crop to have good prices. So, if we have a problem, this market could change dramatically in a hurry. But in recent years, we've cried problem, and end up having this year record yields on corn. So it's kind of like the Chicken Little story, Are we going to have a problem even if we say that?
Thanks, Dave. Dave Reichhart, VP of Grain Marketing here at AgPlus. Dave, appreciate your time.
Podcasts by Federated Media.